to address the issues facing Tennesseans today. From 10 News, this is Inside Tennessee.
Good morning and welcome to Inside Tennessee. I'm your moderator along with my colleague John North. We appreciate you joining us this Sunday morning to talk about what was a historic special session last week for state lawmakers and another one to come this week. Our guest this morning, State Senator Richard Briggs of Knoxville. Good to have you, Senator, and also Representative Gloria Johnson. She's a Democrat. He is a Republican. It's nice to have both of you. Don Bosch runs his own law firm. He happens to be a Democrat. Susan Richardson Williams runs her own PR firm. She is a Republican. Great to have everybody here. Dr. Briggs, I'm going to start with you because this mega site was billed by your colleagues as one of the most momentous moves that Tennessee has done in a long time. In fact, we had an economist on a couple of weeks ago on this program, Fox, who said this was a 10 kind of project. Explain why lawmakers had to get involved.
Well, one of the things that we had to do is that there was a very large incentive package directly to the Ford Motor Company. It was a $500 million potential grant that they can use for infrastructure improvements. The communities down there in those two counties, for the most part, they're really to be quite frank, they're very poor counties. In the past, they've been some of our distressed counties. There was another $168 million that's going to go to them to help them with some of the roads and other infrastructure that they're going to need because they just can't provide that on their own. And I'd like to add, this is the biggest project that's ever occurred in the state of Tennessee. It's absolutely huge. It'll generate 27,000 jobs if you consider the direct and indirect employment that'll occur. $5.6 billion just in building the building. They'll employ 33,000 temporary workers on this. The state revenue, once this is up and going, they're going to call it the Blue Oval City. It's one thing that I think in general, where the Democrats and the Republicans came together and said this will be a generational transformation moment, maybe even a multi-generational moment for the people that live in those poor counties that have actually lost population since the last census.
The governor's office also saying it'll generate about $3.5 billion of added investment to the state. To put that in perspective, the state budget every year is roughly $40 billion. So you see, it's a pretty decent chunk if you're talking project. What's your take on this deal?
Yeah, well, we are excited about it as well. As Dr. Briggs says, it is a bipartisan effort. But, the thing that we're excited about is we're talking about really good jobs with good wages and good benefits. The average Tennessee line worker makes $18 an hour. The average UAW Ford worker makes $32 an hour. And the average salary in Tennessee is $32,000. The average Ford salary is $92,000. So what we're doing here is we're really talking about what good wages and benefits looks like. Tennesseans, I hope, get to start seeing what that looks like and reaping the benefits of what that looks like. And our entire state will reap those economy. That these are electric cars, and this is the green energy jobs that we've been talking about for a mega site that's been, empty for a while. And it's so great that we get to do this, especially for some of those communities that are really struggling. And I think it's going to be a benefit for all Tennesseans.
Sticking with you, Representative Johnson, John North and I had the TCAT president in Knoxville on just a couple of weeks ago talking about how they are trying to set up a pipeline as well so that East Tennesseans may see some benefit and be able to go to school here and get a job there. Is that what you're hearing as well?
Yes, I'm excited about another TCAT. I know here in Knoxville, we're always full. So anytime that we're getting people more skills and the skills they need, it's going to be a huge benefit to all those students in Tennessee, but especially those in the western area that haven't had the benefit.
Dr. Briggs and Gloria, could I ask you, no doubt it would be transformational, this mega project, But I have a transparency question, and that is some concerns have been raised about how, as this moves into the hands of the authority that will oversee its development or evolution, about how the public will have assurances that money is being well spent, that nothing sort of questionable may be happening behind the scenes. I'm curious, one, if you all have any of those concerns, and two, if you think there have been any adequate sort of measures taken to ensure we do have transparency.
Dr. Briggs?
Yeah, I would like to, I'd like to respond to that, and I think it's a very legitimate question. We had Deborah Fisher from the Organization for Open Government. She testified in my committee and in the committee prior to mine about that. But in addition to the funding we're doing, the other bill that was necessary to pass dealt with forming a committee or an organization to manage the entire site, because the Ford will be using around 3,600 acres. There'll be another 500 acres for other uses. For instance, there's going to be a new TCAT formed right there. But it was modeled under the same legislation that we use for our Tennessee Department of Economic Development. And even looking a little closer at home, it's the same model that our Industrial Development Board and the Development Corporation uses, that recruits locally our businesses to Knox County. When you're dealing with these companies, there has to be a certain amount of confidentiality when they're sharing information with outside government organizations, and some of that's proprietary information. Always this can be challenged if it felt that there's insufficient transparency. But we've seen it work very well in Knox County. We've seen it work very well throughout the state on other very large projects that were recruited by the Tennessee Department of Economic Development.
Representative Johnson, your take on John's question about transparency.
Yeah, we do have some questions about transparency. I think we're just going to have to be diligent about keeping people's feet to the fire and that sort of thing. But there are some questions. One of our bigger questions was to the board that Senator Briggs was talking about. We really pushed. Representative Clemens had an amendment that he really wanted to push for local seats on that board. There is nothing right now that says the local county folks get a seat on the board. And we're talking about property use and all of those things. We really felt critical that we need to ensure that we had local people from those counties on the board, and a little bit of frustration that didn't happen. So again, it's just going to be about holding people's feet to the fire when we'll engage the locals, but we'll have to make sure that it happens.
Our conversation will continue on Inside Tennessee. Don and Susan will let you jump in right after this. Again, we'll recap the Ford mega site that happened last week and look ahead to this week. Lawmakers headed back to special session, this time focused on COVID-19 restrictions. That conversation when we come back.